Hello again. It's Mike. So today is for me is a pivotal day. One, this video is going to be about what I keep calling the altruistic problem. Um, a friend of mine, she's a biochemist, and she's the first person that I was able to successfully communicate my idea. It's funny. So I introduced her. This is she's a biochemist. She's never heard of slime molds. Um, and I introduced, it was the TED Talk, the slime mold TED Talk. I wish I could remember the lady's name. She explains it like fantastically. It's perfect. Excuse me. So, cause I was explaining to her like, we talked a lot, but we happened to get around this topic. Um, Explain how slime molds, they actually have recreated I think it's the Japanese, like the rail tradeways and all this stuff. She didn't believe me, so so I showed her this. Uh, no, they all and how it was amazing. She's blown away. I'm blown away by it. I love it. So, kind of going back to how or why this is the slime mold actually is my model is that it breaks down the architecture is I'm almost done with it, but it breaks down to just like the atomic thing is a contract. You have like your definition of a contract, the implementation of the contract, and that's how just like everything works. There's always like there's an agreement, there's an acceptance. Like we started talking about like bacteria and whatnot. She said you'll get blown away if once we really think about bacteria. Actually, no, it was after. No, it was that. So we were talking about like neurotransmitters. You have proteins, and by the way, I don't have a background in biology or whatever, so I'm gonna probably make a lot of just say a lot of stupid things. But I'm sure somebody who actually understands this. If you do, by the way, please email me. I need more people that actually understand this concept. So, like you say, you have like a bacteria or a virus or cell, any kind of cell, where it's like certain proteins like attached to these neurotransmitters, or so many of a certain protein is you know is around to trigger to switch this contract on this neurotransmitter on, which triggers some effect, and then so on and so forth. So it's like a kind of a chain reaction of contracts. So with that said, she finally it was finally kind of like a light switch on. Like, oh shoot, I understand now what you're talking about with what I call the altruistic problem. Because you think about us like human beings, we always have the principle of it's old number one first. Always yourself. You always look at something and assess something based on like you always do a risk and rewards assessment. What's the potential, of each? What's the criteria, of doing something, whether it's going to the beach or, I don't know, signing some fancy contract for some deal or whatever. That's everything. It's just all a contract. This is what it is. Is there an acceptance? So on and so forth. So the altruistic problem, as I described it, is, if you think about like a system, whether it's like some organisms like the slime mold. So you don't worry about any kind of like altruism. It's just like pure. That the system is purely altruistic. Every contract that's given, if the work works out, like say has cell A gets protein Y, and it says, oh yeah, this is the contract I accept. It accepts it, and so you have, and then there might be maybe 5 of that contract has to be accepted for another type of contract to be fulfilled. So you start building from like, say hypothetically, you have like the basics of life, like the essential proteins and all that stuff. Those are all like how they interact. Those are like all contracts, and so and then contracts can be reliant on other contracts. So many contracts have to be fulfilled, to build complexity. So your atomic thing is a contract. It gets really weird when once you get it, once the lights switch on, you start thinking of like, huh. So it's like a neutron, a result of a contract, like of a proton and an electron finding each other. And then what does that what does that mean? That attraction and whatnot. And you also think of things like large crowds of people. Like the more dense, the more people there are, it's like it goes straight up, like the urgency level of like fights break out. The tighter it is, like the more aggression, the more energy builds, and you just can have like a super critical reaction where just all hell breaks loose, fights, so on and so forth, just go. But then you notice like, okay, if a crowd is underneath a certain amount, there's not too much energy, but just so maybe you're actually able to calculate the right amount of people, so you have like the right amount of energy, for excitement to happen. Kind of carrying that whole concept further is like if you compare like LA to San Diego. I love San Diego. It's like the perfect amount of chill and the perfect amount of busy. But like LA, a lot more dense, a lot more higher energy level, a lot more. It's just like I mean, just imagine, getting hit with a tennis ball with a light lob versus like out of a cannon 80 miles per hour. It's like that's the personality types you run into in LA. It's like a high energy situation. So when you like meet people from different areas, like whatever their energy level was in that particular area, it's still with them until it's dispersed amongst people essentially. So it's kind of a weird way of looking at things, but it feels right. Especially go watch this slime mold thing and just think like, throughout my day, how many decisions do I make? Each decision, how is that decision structured? And then how do, a few different decisions maybe build into another one? Like let's say like a complex thing would be, let's say, I don't know, blanking. Like say your morning coffee, like the criteria, that you like, oh, I accept that I am like tired and enough to trigger this urge for this caffeinated beverage, and for whatever reason, like it triggers like your routine is like has a set routine that triggers a series of contracts that like you are going to you might go to Starbucks, and so like so on and so forth. So like a collection of all these contracts and contracts equate to the contract or work done for you to get out of bed and go to Starbucks, buy your coffee, and then that contract's done. And then maybe going to work, like for you to go to work, your Starbucks coffee contract has to be fulfilled. So you fulfilled that, you have enough gas in your car, and go to work. So, but if you didn't have your coffee, then like you can't go to work. If you had it like that rigidness, whatever. So again, the altruistic problem. What is it? We have evolved enough complexity that an altruistic system has been able to be eluded. It's kind of like if you look at that TED Talk with slime molds. It's when the slime mold has like exhausted all it can do in a petri dish and has found a way out. It grew out. So it's like, oh, well, I can make these contracts where this altruistic system just listens. So it just listens. I'm able to screw it over, and I'm able to gain. So contracts like that would evolve. You think of like let's think of like viruses, bacteria, and those kind of like organisms that have evolved contracts to be able to fool the host that they try to kill and take over and eat, for self, ego, so to speak. So it's a beautiful thing. So when you talk about the altruistic problem, you're like, how can I defeat the complete opposite? Like you have to assume like complete distrust, as I mentioned in my other nonsense videos. So you take that assumption, like you assume you assume the worst. You have a score based on how, like a health score, or Darwinism score, so to speak. So you have, for someone to make an agreement, there's always a third party. I mean, just like your standard to private public key, encryption that encrypts the web, so to speak. It's kind of the same thing. So you have a third party. This is my indirect bartering system that I came up with. So it evolved into, this acceptance protocol. So A and B, A makes a request or an offer to B, which costs it like a score, a Darwinism score. I actually like now I like a Darwinism score. I like that name. So every time it sends a request, it costs that score, unless it's in a system that is an altruistic system. So we're not in an altruistic system. It costs score for A to issue this contract to B. B accepts it. A and B have accepted it, and then we send it to somebody we know. Another guy in another cell in the distributed decentralized ledger network, whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it the slime mold data model, but maybe I should just call it the slime mold network, of badassness. So then we're kind of like, it's an altruistic way of doing this acceptance. So we passed on this message that this contract definition and implementation was accepted by B, both A and B. They agree on this. So then somebody else, each third party can ask, each party for the work, and then is able to do, if it's able to duplicate the work, it's like, okay, yeah, I accept this too, and then would pass it on as long as needed for it to reach like an optimal, because it's measuring risk, doing a risk reward score. And if it ends up popping up like, oh, this is a high risk, but it ends up everyone accepts it because the work adds up, then that's kind of like an evolution. So like, say you have like, this is where it gets really weird. So you have contracts, and see, anyone could be able, since everyone is independent, like the slime mold, all cells are independent, but they talk to each other through their different contract types, their different proteins, and then there are different quantities of proteins, and builds and builds and builds. Shoot. So, yeah, so as I said, it's weird when you think about contract changes. So, a contract change would be even as effective, like, oh, I'm this contract and I want to allow this other contract to change. So that contract record gets updated, and an update record is a new record. So it's put out there. So you have these two different contract types out there, and see, everybody in the network acting individually, they're naturally going to do this. They're like, oh, I'm either going to accept this type of contract thing or not, or they set it like kind of like automatically, be that this new evolution of a contract is accepted. Like the constant evolution of contracts would just continue naturally through people's acceptance or rejections, and which would also result in disputes. So like that, the dispute is obviously, it's like kind of like it's a competition thing, because if something's disputed and a dispute is accepted, then that contract is, well, if it's extinguished, whether it's like a cheaty contract, like, oh, I'm working in the money system and I'm trying to cheat the system. Well, the system is either going to accept it as truth or it's not. If you get like a kind of a collective of individuals that want to believe something is true, and accept it, it'll be in the system, but the system's going to constantly try to reject it, because the ones that are not operating on this contract mutation to try to cheat the system are going to identify as like, oh, this is a mutant here, and because the work does not add up, whether me using this contract, that the mutated contract or my contract. It's just too different. There's too much conflict. So therefore, it's like, think like cancer and the body's reaction to cancer. It's if it identifies it early enough, and is I want to say it's a VIR. Just it's called, if it's a badass enough to be able to, like, ooh, I'm not gonna screw around. This, like, I recognize you. You're an enemy, and I'm gonna attack it. Otherwise, like, the cancer wins, right? So if the cancer is able to get a large enough acceptance, you'd have to mutate everybody, and in a convincing, like, oh, this is the right thing. This is the right contract, which would end up eating the network. So the network have to fight against this type of infection. But it would win. Usually, yeah, it's, hypothetically, it will always win in a healthy system. It's only, so. I know. I'm sorry. It's just cool. I got So that said, it's the same thing. Like, if you think of, like, oh, why is a newborn baby, so open, to to everything. It's like it hasn't experienced life enough. There's not enough contracts closed to reinforce, like, proper like, I'm saying the baby has proper behavior, but, like, the body and the physiology, has proper behavior in how it exists presently. Anyways, so today, yes, to me it's like I don't know, just when you just see it, understanding someone's face. It's the same thing when you recognize, oh, this person wants to have an interaction contract. Like, you look in the eyes, and there's, like, not like a quick look away. That's like, oh no, it's a rejection of interaction. No reaction, interaction. But, like, you have, like, the right amount of eye contact, and it's just like, it just clicks. You gotta like act right then. Like, okay, the eye contact contract closed. Say hello. The hello protocol. And then to start the breadcrumb, questioning, questions like, oh, what are you doing in town, so on and so forth, and you build enough contracts and complexity where you're able to talk about bigger and better things, that because you've already closed all those agreements. Oh, and kind of going back to the eye contact. So again, where it's kind of like a rejection. It's like, if you have, the contract is not in that sweet ripe avocado zone, like, so it goes past. So then it's like, oh, the ego, the self-defense, like, this is weird, because, like, eye contact protocol was breached here. It was done differently. It was too long, and therefore there's a problem. Like, the person's creepy, or something's wrong. So it's kind of like that same mentality with the contracts and how it's going to be how it's being designed. So I have a few more details I need to kind of iron out to make sure, like, I have, like, my most atomic, model element, and then just how to just have these few pieces together. But I'm really excited. So you heard it first. It's a altruistic problem. That's what I'm calling it. So thanks.